Hey Econ students, this is Jacob Clifford. Welcome to the Microeconomics Unit 1 summary video. Now in these summary videos, I go really quick, cover all those key concepts to get them back in your brain for your test, or your midterm, or your AP test, or your final exam. This is gonna cover it all. I've organized this course based on the AP Microeconomics curriculum, but keep in mind if you're in college or you're in a master's program, if you're trying to learn basic level, introductory microeconomics, this course covers it all. And be sure to check out my ultimate review packet. It goes along with these videos. It includes tons of practice. So as you're watching this video, fill out the blank unit study guide, then check your answers to verify you can do the calculations and draw different graphs, and make sure to do the practice tests and watch the exclusive videos that are all part of the packet. And the first unit is free, so make sure to go download the Unit 1 study guide and fill it out as you're watching the rest of this video. We're gonna start off with Unit 1, which is basic economics concepts. It's gonna start off with the idea of scarcity, then we'll talk about economic systems and resource allocation, the production possibilities curve, comparative advantage and trade, and then cost-benefit analysis, and finish it off with marginal analysis. If it's your first time watching this video, make sure to watch it all the way through, but if you're just here to review, you can click ahead based on these timestamps. That tells you where each one of these topics are covered. But remember, in these summary videos, I'm going super quick because I'm trying to get the concepts back in your brain. But in the ultimate review packet, I have a breakdown that's going to tell you the different topics and links to those topics on YouTube. So if you need to practice a specific topic and get that concept in your brain, you can of course go back to YouTube and verify you're getting it. Now before I jump into any of the content, there's one more thing we got to do. Do me a favor, drop your pencil right now, make sure there's nothing in front of you, take out your fist and do this. Thumb out and then pinky out. Thumb out and then pinky out. Just like this. Do this a couple times. Okay? Perfect. All right, that was round one. Okay, round two, I want you to do the same thing except with both hands. So pinkies out, thumbs out, pinkies out, thumbs out, pinkies out, thumbs out. Okay, do this. All right, that's round two. All right, here we go. Last one, round three. I want you to do pinky out, thumb out at the same time, and then pinky out, thumb out, just like this. Okay? All right, try this. Perfect. There's two reasons I'm making you do this. The first one is that economics is exactly the same way. It starts off really easy. There's gonna be all these concepts, you're like, oh, I totally get this. Oh, scarcity, easy, right? And then it starts getting a little harder, and then it gets a lot harder. And when it gets a lot harder, you gotta slow down, you gotta practice. Obviously, I'm really good at this. I can do this all day long, but that doesn't mean that you're good at it. So if you're watching me and thinking, oh, he did that, I get it, it makes sense. Nah. You gotta practice. And that's the second reason why we're doing this. I wanted to find out if you can participate. So if you just watch me doing this and you didn't do anything at all and you didn't practice, you're probably not gonna get the most out of these videos. You're not using them right. So when I say, okay, stop, practice drawing this graph, or try doing this in the ultimate review packet, stop the video and practice, because that means you're actually trying, verifying you're actually getting it. Remember, I'm really good at economics. I can explain all the concepts, I can draw those graphs and do those calculations really quick, and it makes it look easy, but it's not gonna be the same for you. You are gonna have to practice. The point is, please participate.
And that's it! Now let's do this!
We're going to start off talking about what economics is. It's the science of scarcity. Scarcity is the idea that we have unlimited wants and limited resources. So in your class, it's the first thing your teacher is going to talk about. Most people think economics is about money. It's not. It's about limited resources. So economics is how we deal with the idea that we can't have everything and we're forced to make choices. It's really how individuals and societies deal with the idea of scarcity. Now, there's some key terms I want you to go over. There's a difference between microeconomics and macroeconomics, and there's actually two different courses. So if you're in college, you're probably taking micro or macro, and they're the same thing for the AP test. Microeconomics is the study of small economic units, so looking at firms and individuals and their decision making, and governments as well. But macroeconomics is looking at the big picture, the entire economy, like inflation and unemployment and gross domestic product, and how the economy is doing. Is there a recession? How can the government help to get out of a recession? Should the government help to get out of a recession? These are all concepts you'll see in macroeconomics. Trade-offs is another key concept. It's all the things you give up when you make a decision. But they're all the things, not just one. So what's the trade-off of watching this video? Well, you could be watching some other video. You could be hanging out with your friends. You could be sleeping. The time watching this video has a cost, the things that you're giving up. But you can't do them all, right? You can only actually have done one. The one best thing, the thing you gave up, is called your opportunity cost. It's the most desirable alternative when a choice is made. Now, most people think when we talk about cost, we're talking about dollars and cents, but it's not just that, right? There's other concepts. For example, who you should date. You have to decide, what's my opportunity cost? If I date that girl, if I date that guy, who's the person I'm giving up by dating them? Now, this concept is the most important concept in economics. And most importantly, it sets you up for what the point of the class is. This class will change the way you make decisions. It's going to enlighten your mind to allow you to make better choices. Opportunity cost is the key to that. Whenever you make a choice, you got to think of, well, what am I giving up to make this choice? So this happens for individuals, businesses, for the government. This idea of opportunity cost is huge. Okay, there's 5 key economic assumptions. I'm going to go over each one of them pretty quick. The first one, all resources are scarce. We have unlimited wants and limited resources. And because of that, we're forced to make choices, and everything has a cost. Your teacher probably already told you there's no such thing as a free lunch, right? So everything has a cost, something that you gave up to get it. Everyone responds to incentives and acts in their own self-interest, right? And then for number 4, everyone makes decisions by looking at the additional benefit and the additional cost of your decision. So you weigh the benefits and costs of every decision. And last one, life can be explained kind of with graphs. You can use graphs to explain life. You can explain the economy with graphs. It's not perfect, but you're going to see a lot of graphs in this class, starting here in Unit 1. There's a couple other key terms I want to cover really quickly. First one is the idea of investment. Now, when you hear the word investment, you think of stocks and bonds and retirement accounts. Not in economics. In economics, investment is always when a business buys machines, tools, and capital for their own business. So they're buying things to improve their business. Now, I use this term capital. You're going to see that too. A lot of people think capital is money. No, no, no. There's actually 2 types of goods. There's consumer goods, which are made for direct consumption, like pizza, and there's capital goods. Capital goods are tools, machines to produce stuff. So blenders, ovens, knives, those are the things for a pizza company, that's their capital. Now, there's also something called human capital. Human capital is the knowledge and skills required to produce things. So like a doctor goes to school to get human capital, and you can improve those things over time. Now, another thing you're going to hear is something called the 4 factors of production. When you produce something, if you produce a computer, if you produce a table, if you produce a cell phone, there's resources that go into it, and they can be categorized into 4 things: land, labor, capital, and some people say entrepreneurship. So inside any product, there's certain resources go into it. Who owns the resource determines what kind of economic system you have. Now let's look at the big picture. Scarcity means there's not enough for everyone, so we have to figure out the best way to allocate our scarce resources. Now, how we do that determines something called our economic system. There's three main economic questions every society has to answer: what goods and services should be produced, how it should be produced, and who consumes those goods and services. So how do you figure this, how to run society? Well, basically, the idea is if you answer these questions and the answers are all the government decides. The government decides. That's one way to run your society. And there's another way where individuals decide. So the way these questions are answered determines your economic system. It's the method society uses to produce and distribute goods and services. Now, there's really just 2 main types we're going to talk about. We go a lot more detail in other videos, but the idea is centrally planned and free market economies. The centrally planned economy is one where the government owns all the resources. It owns basically the workers and tells them where they can work and what jobs they should have. The basic ideas came from the idea of Karl Marx, and there's a bunch of other people who've pushed the idea of centrally planned economies. Now, free market, or capitalist economies, come from the idea of a guy named Adam Smith. He basically said, let individuals decide what to produce and how to produce it and who gets it, and let the market do it all. That's called capitalism. Now, your standard AP or college introductory course is going to talk about free market economies. They're going to focus on those because really that's what most of the world is doing. The most important concept in capitalism is the idea of the invisible hand. The invisible hand is the idea that society's goals will be met as individuals seek their own goals. So a business can't get rich and can't make money unless they do something that you want. Like if I produce cars, I got to make awesome cars. I got to make awesome computers. I got to make awesome phones. If I don't, then people aren't going to buy them. So they got to make other people better off. And so society's resources will go to the right place based on what we want produced. Competition and self-interest regulate the free market system. Now, there's all sorts of situations this doesn't work, with monopolies and externalities and other concepts you're going to learn in this course. But the idea of the invisible hand is the reason why this computer was not made by the government. That camera was not made by the government. A lot of the stuff around you was not made by the government. It's regulated by the government. That's true, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. But we don't want the government saying exactly what to produce and how much to produce and who gets it. That system hasn't worked. And that brings us to the idea of mixed economies. A mixed economy is a system that has both free market and centrally planned, like parts to it. Some government involvement in different things, more government involvement in some countries than others. But if you want to learn more, go ahead and click on one of these. You've got economic thinkers and you've got economic system. I did those with the crash course people. There's also a video of me going to China where this Chinese lady checked me out. It's pretty funny. Take a look. Anyways, let's move on. Now it's time for the key graph in this course, something called the production possibilities curve. Now your teacher might call it the production possibilities frontier. The point is it's all the same thing. It's basically a model that shows the alternative ways we can use our scarce resources. It's going to show trade-offs, scarcity, opportunity cost, efficiency, all on one graph. Now it starts off with a chart. This chart showing bikes and computers, A, B, C, D is all different combinations. So we can produce all bikes and no computers, or all computers and no bikes, or some combination between. So if you actually plot this, you come up with a production possibilities curve. Each point represents a specific combination of the two goods we can produce at full employment using all of our resources. So if we take the chart, put it on a graph, it's going to look like this. You've got bikes, computers, and you plot the different points, and you've got, boom, right here, production possibilities curve. Now, a couple things you need to know. First, any point inside the curve is the idea of inefficiency. If we're producing only 2 computers and 2 bikes, we're being inefficient with our resources. If we're producing any point on the curve, then we're actually producing what's efficient. Right? We're producing, using all of our resources, all of our workers, all of our factors of production to produce this stuff. And outside the curve, you can't produce that quantity. There's just not enough resources, right? So we could, if there was more technology and better resources, we could produce out there in the future. But for right now, for whatever reason, we cannot produce right here at point G. Okay, there's a couple different shapes to this graph, and I want you to take a look at it. Let's talk about calzones and pizzas. Notice when you produce another pizza, you lose 1 calzone. When you produce another pizza, you lose another calzone. When you produce another pizza, you lose 1 more calzone. Now the opportunity cost here, it's constant. When every single time you produce a pizza, you lose 1 calzone. That's called constant opportunity cost, and it shows you that resources between the two products are very similar. Right? You can use resources for pizza, the same resources for producing the calzones. Now it's going to result in a production possibilities curve that's a straight line. Now let's look at a different scenario. Let's look at pizzas and robots. Right here, when I produce the very first robot, I gain 1 robot, but I lose 1 pizza. When I go here, I gain 1 more robot, but now I lose 3 pizzas. Later on, I gain 1 robot and I lose 10 pizzas. Notice, I lost only 1 pizza here, and now I'm losing 10 pizzas? Something's going on, and it's called the law of increasing opportunity cost. As you produce more of anything, the opportunity cost to produce it's going to get bigger and bigger. And the reason why is because resources are not easily adaptable between the production of these two products, pizzas and robots. Let me explain why with an example. If we're producing combination A, we're producing all pizza. So all workers, including workers that are better suited towards robots, are working at producing pizza. Now when we move to combination B, we're moving out those scientists and those people who are good at making robots. We gain 1 robot and we don't lose very many pizzas because they're not particularly good at making pizzas anyways. Now if you keep doing that, you're going to keep moving resources away or out of producing pizzas towards robots, but eventually you'll start using the resources that are better suited towards making pizza. For example, right here, we get only 1 more robot, but we're moving away these pizza makers who that's what their job is, right? Luigi working in the back of the pizza restaurant, he's way better at making pizzas than he is robots. So the opportunity cost is super high. Remember, it's 10 pizzas we have to give up, moving from D to E. Again, this is called increasing opportunity cost. Let's see if you understand it with another example. We've got forks and spoons, forks and apples. Which one of these is a straight line and which one is a bowed out curve? Well, right here. Forks and spoons, straight line, that's constant opportunity cost, and a bowed out, forks and apples, that's increasing opportunity cost. The idea here is you produce more and more spoons, you're going to give up the same amount of forks each time. But as you produce more and more apples, you're going to give up a little bit of forks, and then more forks, and more forks, and a whole lot of forks. Now, I've made a bunch of videos explaining this concept. In fact, I've made something called Econmovies. If you haven't seen them, take a look. But I've explained it in this video. I'm not going to talk about shifting the production possibilities curve in this video, but there is some practice questions on your packet. Make sure to try those because it's pretty self-explanatory. If for whatever reasons we have like new technology, this entire curve can shift outward, right? We can get more forks and more apples. One of the things I do want to cover is the idea of growth in the future. So take a look at 2 different countries. We've got Panama over here, we've got Mexico over here. Let's say here's the production possibilities curve for Panama. They can produce consumer goods and capital goods. Let's say they're producing a certain combination, which is producing a whole lot of consumer goods. Now their future growth curve, I'll put right here, is out here. Right? So they'll have growth over time, they'll be able to produce more in the long run. But over on this side, take a look. Let's put another country, there's Mexico, and they're producing this combination. Less consumer goods, which sucks. They're getting less bananas and clothes and stuff like that, but they are getting a whole lot more capital goods. The question is, what's the future curve going to look like for Mexico? Is it going to be the same distance out as Panama? Is it going to be farther out? Is it going to be less growth? Well, it's right here. There's going to be way more growth. Why? Because capital is a resource. The more capital you produce, the more production you can do in the future, because capital is a shifter of the curve. You can get more output by producing more capital. So I know it seems like I'm rushing through this stuff, and I'm not trying to, but just trust me, this first unit, the beginning stuff, is really easy. That's why I'm going really fast. Trust me, you're going to get it. It's easy. Now I'm going to slow down. This is something that's a lot trickier. It's called specialization and trade. It's this idea of comparative advantage. All right, it starts off easy. The idea of absolute advantage. People are sometimes better at producing than other people. So some people can produce things better than other people. This is the idea of absolute advantage. They can produce more output, or they can use fewer resources to produce the same output as some other person. They're just better at making things. Now, the United States probably has an absolute advantage in the production of shoes. I mean, we could probably produce a boatload of shoes if we wanted to, because we could, and we're just a very large, powerful, productive country. But we don't produce shoes. We probably could produce the most in the entire world, but we don't. We specialize in other things that we produce instead. We let other countries specialize in shoes. Now that's the idea of comparative advantage. Comparative advantage is the idea of having production having a lower opportunity cost. So I can produce this at a lower opportunity cost than somebody else. The United States produces very few shoes, but we produce a whole lot of things like airplanes or CGI movies, right? Movies like Pixar movies, we produce a lot of computer movies because that's what we're good at. And we have a lower opportunity cost than another country who can't produce those things. The idea here is that countries should specialize in trade when they have a comparative advantage. If you're better at producing something than I am, and I'm not as good as that producing that thing, and I'll specialize in the thing that I'm really good at, we both can trade and we can both benefit, right? So I'll trade you the movies, you trade me the shoes, we both walk away happier. This is a production possibilities curve. It shows you how much sugar and wheat the US can produce and how much sugar and wheat Brazil can produce. Now, first question, which country has an absolute advantage in the production of sugar? Well, the United States. They can produce 30 tons and Brazil can only produce 20 tons. So the United States can produce more sugar. Now, who has an absolute advantage in the production of wheat? Well, the United States. They produce 30 and Brazil can only produce 10. So you can see the United States has an absolute advantage in both. Now, people assume that if the United States can produce more of both, we should produce both, but we don't. This is the idea of international trade and comparative advantage. So I'm going to work backwards here, but stay with me. Let's say the United States specializes in wheat and Brazil specializes in producing the sugar, and they trade 1 wheat for 1.5 sugar. I'll explain how I got that number later, but just stay with me. Take a look at this new production possibilities curve. This is the new numbers based on the trade. If the United States produces all wheat, then they can produce 30 wheat, right? They're down here, they're producing 30 wheat, and they trade one of their wheat, and they get 1.5 sugar. They trade another 1 wheat, they get another 1.5 sugar with the trade. Right, look down at this number, 20 wheat and 15 sugar. 20 wheat is right here, 15 sugar is outside the curve. They're producing, in fact, they're consuming, not producing, they're consuming outside the curve by trading because they're getting that sugar at a lower opportunity cost than if they produce it themselves. Look at Brazil. If Brazil produced all sugar, they produce 20 sugar, they can trade 1.5 sugar to get 1 wheat. Another 1.5 sugar for 1 wheat. Another 1.5 sugar. Look at this number here, 5 and 10. 5 sugar is here, 10 wheat is out here. For both countries, after trade, their curves can shift outward and they can consume more than if they could produce on their own. Right? That's the idea of the benefits of trade. Now, the question is, how did I get those numbers? This is the tricky part. What you got to do when you do these questions, first you got to convert the graphs into a chart. So I've got the countries, US and Brazil. On the top, I've got wheat, I've got sugar. Now I just plug in the numbers. The United States can produce 30 wheat or 30 sugar. Brazil can produce 10 wheat or 20 sugar. So absolute advantage is really easy to spot. It's just whichever country can produce more in this case. So the United States can produce more wheat. They have an absolute advantage in the production of wheat and in sugar. Now, time to calculate comparative advantage. To figure out the comparative advantage, you got to figure out who has a lower opportunity cost. So you have to calculate what's called the per unit opportunity cost for each country. Now it starts out pretty easy. And by the way, the way I set it up is how I would do it with my students. Set up the chart, draw it out every single time like this, and practice this over and over again. Your review packet has several practice questions, but don't do them yet. Wait till I cover this first. And I'm also going to give you a trick, so keep watching. For the U.S., 1 wheat costs 1 sugar. If they produce 1 wheat, they're giving up 1 sugar. That's their opportunity cost. For U.S., 1 sugar costs 1 wheat. That's an easy one. Now, here's my question. For Brazil, how much does each 1 wheat cost? Well, that right answer is 2. 1 wheat costs 2 sugar. It's 2 sugars they could have produced, but they can't produce it when they're producing wheat. And on the other side, each one of the sugar is the reciprocal, it's 1/2. So if they produce 20 sugar and they could be producing 10 wheat, well, each one of the sugar costs 1/2 a wheat they gave up. Now that we have this, we can figure out the comparative advantage because we can find out who has a lower opportunity cost. So which country should be producing the wheat? Who has a comparative advantage in wheat? Well, the United States. They have a lower opportunity cost. It only costs them 1 sugar compared to Brazil that costs them 2 sugars. So they have a lower opportunity cost. When they write these questions, you can't have a comparative advantage for both. So if you see a test question and you find out that U.S. has a comparative advantage in wheat, you're done. You know for a fact that Brazil has the comparative advantage in sugar. But it'll always work out that way. But look at the numbers. It makes sense too. 1/2 is less than 1. The point is, to figure out comparative advantage, you got to calculate something called per unit opportunity cost. Now there's 2 different types of questions. There's output questions and there's input questions. So for this one, we've got Canada, Mexico. This is number of planes they can produce right here, and this is the cars they can produce. So planes and cars. This is going to be an output question. Now on a test question, they would give you more information. They'd say, oh, this is number of planes and cars that Canada and Mexico can produce. But I'm just setting it up. That's the idea of an output question. Now, which country, real quick, has an absolute advantage in the production of planes? Well, Canada. They can produce more planes than Mexico. Which country has an absolute advantage in production of cars? Yeah, Canada. They can produce 20 and Mexico can only produce 10. So Canada has an absolute advantage in both goods. Very true. Now let's go look down here. This next one is the idea of Australia, US. This is number of phones. If they produce 100 phones, this is if they produce 1,000 bikes. This is the number of hours it takes to produce those 100 phones. Now, this is called an input question because the resource is what's variable here. So 50 hours to take to produce 100 phones. This one, US takes 40 hours to produce 100 phones. And over here, Australia takes 20 hours to produce 1,000 bikes. US takes 10 hours to produce those 1,000 bikes. Now the question is, who has an absolute advantage in the production of phones? The answer is the US. Notice, now you're looking for a smaller number because we're looking for hours. It's better to use fewer resources, in this case fewer hours, to produce the phones. And over here, who has an absolute advantage in the production of bikes? Well, the US, they take fewer hours. Notice the numbers are exactly the same. They're exactly the same numbers, 50-40, 20-10, 50-40, 20-10. What matters is what the question's asking. If it's an input question, and we're looking at hours, or if an output question and we're looking at the number of things they're producing, the stuff they're actually making. Now you can figure this question out by doing what I showed you earlier, calculating the per unit opportunity cost for Canada. So in this case it would be 1 plane costs, I'll put equal signs for costs, a certain number of cars given up. In this case it would be 2/5 of a car given up. Right? Now you could do that, but it's really time consuming and some students get uncomfortable and it becomes difficult for them. So here's a trick. It's called the quick and dirty. Now the reason why it's called the quick and dirty, because it is super quick, but it's dirty. It's so academically dirty. It's not cheating. It's just like, bleh. You're not going to learn anything. It's just a trick that's going to work every single time. And all the people who didn't watch the video up to this point, well, they missed out because you're going to get the quick and dirty. Go ahead and tell all your friends about it. Mr. Clifford did the quick and dirty with me. It was exciting. First, you understand the idea that there's only 2 possible outcomes that's going to happen here to get comparative advantage. Canada should be producing the planes and Mexico would produce the cars, right? So it would be this situation right here. It would be this. I'm going to draw a diagonal representing Canada would be producing planes and then Mexico cars. Or the other option is Mexico is going to be producing the planes and Canada is going to be the cars. So this other is the other possibility. Remember, you can't have a comparative advantage in both products. They can't have a comparative advantage producing both. So here's the quick and dirty. So 50 times 10 gives you a certain total number of things produced, which would be 500. Right? So that's 50 times 10. Or the other one is 40 times 20. 40 times 20 is 800. Now, since 800 is more than 500, that means that is the right answer. Bam, quick and dirty. No doubt about it, guaranteed. You can do all the other calculations if you want. Mexico is going to be producing the planes, and the Canada is going to be producing the cars. Right? Again, here's how I got it. I multiplied the possible outcomes. It's either this or this, the one that gives me the most, because that's what I want. I want the most stuff. Right? That means it has a comparative advantage. Right? That's the idea of getting comparative advantage, and it is quick and it is dirty. Now let's go down here, except remember, we're doing an input question. So we're doing the same thing. It's 50 right here times 10, which we already said is 500, or it's going to be the other option, which is 40 times 20, which is 800. So which one's the right option? Well, it's definitely 500. Now you're going to use less hours to produce the phones and bikes. And so no doubt about it, US should be producing the bikes. And right here, Australia should be producing the phones. Again, you could do all the other calculations if you wanted to, but this is a quick and dirty way to get the right answer. Okay, how you doing? You with me? You get the concepts? All right, we're going to take it to the next level. We're going to learn this idea of what's called terms of trade. Terms of trade is that both countries can benefit, but they don't benefit at every single term of trade. For example, they have to have a certain number of cars traded for a certain number of planes to benefit both countries. So an example I gave you earlier was 1 wheat for 1.5 sugar for Brazil and the US would benefit both countries. How did I come with that number? Well, that's what you're going to figure out. Again, it's called terms of trade. It's the agreed upon conditions that would benefit both countries. So we've got an example question. Kenya, India, pineapples, radios, 30, 10, 40, and 40. What I want you to do right now is I want you to pause this video. I want you to figure out who has an absolute advantage in pineapples and radios, who has a comparative advantage in pineapples and radios. Also, I want you to try, I know you don't want to, I know you want to do the quick and dirty, but I want you to try to actually calculate the per unit opportunity cost for each one of those and figure out who has a lower opportunity cost, all right? All right, pause the video, see how you do. Okay, you got it? Here we go. For Kenya, each one of those pineapples costs 1/3 of a radio they gave up. Right, and each one of the radios costs 3 pineapples. Now, though, India is pretty easy. It's 1 pineapple costs 1 radio costs 1 pineapple. Now that we're there, it's time to figure out who has a comparative advantage, who has a lower opportunity cost. And it's easy because you have the numbers, right? Pineapples, 1/3. For Kenya, it costs 1/3 of radio. For India, it costs 1 radio. Who would you rather have producing the pineapples? The one that has a lower opportunity cost. So Kenya should produce pineapples. Again, I'm circling the one that has the lower opportunity cost, the one who should specialize in pineapples. Right? India has a lower opportunity cost, 1 compared to 3, lower opportunity cost in producing the radios, and so they have a comparative advantage. Now, let's use the quick and dirty to check to see if you're actually right. 30 times 40 gives you 1,200. 40 times 10 gives you 400. 1,200's higher. That must be its right answer. Done. Output question. That's the quick and dirty. But we're not done. Remember, we have to learn something called terms of trade. So we have to figure out each one radio can be traded for how many pineapples to benefit both countries. Now, I'll tell you right now, 1 radio for 10 pineapples is good for one country, but not good for the other country. And 1 radio for like a half a pineapple is good for one country, but not the other. So there's a range. You have to get the right number in that range. Now, I'll help you out and figure out how you get this. What you got to do is you look right here. This tells you, once you've calculated this per unit opportunity cost, the number for 1 radio for a certain number of pineapples has to be between 3 and 1. Right? For example, 2 would work. So 1 radio for 2 pineapples would benefit both countries. But why is that? Well, the reason why is this. If Kenya produces radios by themselves, so remember, Kenya's producing pineapples, right? They're producing pineapples. If they want to produce radios, they're going to make them themselves, or they got to trade for them. If they make it themselves, how much does it cost them? Well, it costs them 3 pineapples, right? So if they produce it themselves, it costs them 3. They'd rather trade 2 pineapples and get a radio than they would give up 3 pineapples and get 1 radio by producing it themselves. So this works for Kenya. They're like, awesome, that's a great trade. It's better to give up 2 than 3. But now let's look at India, right? They can produce pineapples on their own. If they do, it's going to cost them 1 radio, right? So they produce a pineapple, and it's going to cost them 1 radio. But in this case, they can give up 1 radio and get 2 pineapples, right? They give up 1 radio, because they're specializing in radios, they can get 2 pineapples, as opposed to giving up a radio and getting only 1 pineapple themselves. So in this case, 1 radio for 2 pineapples benefits both countries, and that's a terms of trade that is great for both of them.
Boy, that escalated quickly.
Okay, that was a whole lot, and for many students, comparative advantage is the hardest thing for them to learn, especially here in Unit 1. So right now, it's time to stop and fill out the unit study guide on the ultimate review packet to verify you're actually getting it. So try an output question, try an input question, calculate the terms of trade, see if you can actually do this right now. And if you get all the answers right, awesome, keep watching this video, but if you don't understand it, go back to YouTube, watch my topic video that covers the concept over again, and make sure you understand comparative advantage, then start the video back up.
All right. Let's do this!
Now, the next thing you gotta know is the idea of cost-benefit analysis. I posted a video about this. Take a look if you wanna go into more detail, but basically you gotta know the idea of explicit cost and implicit cost. Your explicit cost is the normal out-of-pocket cost of doing anything. So the dollar amount it costs you to run a business. Your implicit cost is your opportunity cost, the money that you could be making, or the travel that you could have done if you didn't go to college. So when economists are talking about weighing benefits and costs, they're talking about explicit and implicit costs. And pretty much all of microeconomics is this idea. You're weighing benefits and costs, whether you're an individual, a business, or you're the government. All of these entities need to weigh benefits and costs. Okay, the last topic is part of that. It's marginal analysis and consumer choice. And the first thing you have to do, because you have to do it over and over and over again in every one of the units, is calculate marginal benefit or margin utility or marginal cost when you're given the total benefit, the total utility, and the total cost. And it's not hard at all. Take a look. You've got the number of slices of pizza and the total utility, the total satisfaction you get from having one slice and then two slices and then three slices. All you gotta do is calculate the marginal utility, the additional satisfaction you get from each additional slice of pizza. So all you gotta do is just subtract the first one from the second one. So if you look at, let's say, the second slice of pizza, how much additional satisfaction did I get? Well, it went from 8 utils of satisfaction to 14 utils, so that's an increase of 6. You just keep doing this over and over and over again and calculating the margin utility from the total utility. And again, this is one of those topics and ideas you're gonna do over and over again in every single unit. You're gonna look at margin utility, you're gonna look at marginal benefit, marginal cost, marginal resource cost, marginal revenue product. All these concepts and all the different units you'll see over and over again, it's the same idea. You're calculating the additional benefit or the additional cost. And that kind of goes to the last thing you have to do in this unit, which is the idea of consumer choice. So in this case, you have two different things you can do. In this case, going to the movies or going go-karts. They give you the margin utility. You have to figure out, okay, what combination of these two things maximizes my total utility. So for this one, the margin utility per dollar for going to the movies is 3 for the first time, then 2 for the second, then 1, and then 0.5. And for the go-karts, it's 2, 1, 0.4, 0.2. And you gotta do is figure out which one you wanna do first. Well, obviously the one that gives you the most margin utility per dollar. So you pick the first time going to the movies, and you have some money left over, and so you choose the go-karts. You keep doing that until you run out of money. Now they usually give you an income constraint. In this situation, it's $40, and with that $40, going to the movie 3 times and doing go-karts 2 times would maximize your total utility. Now I know I went through that super fast, and if you're still a little confused, go watch the video where I have you practice this specific skill a couple times over in the Ultimate Review Pack. So watch that video to make sure you actually get it. The important thing here is you have to understand how to calculate margin utility, and you have to understand why calculating margin utility per dollar puts two things in like terms so you can pick the one that gives you the most satisfaction and keep picking that one until it falls below the other one, then you start doing that one instead, and eventually they'll equal each other. And that's the whole idea of this equation. This right here is the utility maximizing rule. It looks confusing and difficult, but it's not. It's just the margin utility for product X divided by the price of good X until it equals the margin utility for good Y divided by the price of Y. Basically, this is the idea of, buy this one first if it gives you the most satisfaction per dollar spent until it falls, so it hits this one, and then do this one, and eventually they equal each other. That's when you're gonna maximize your total utility. Okay, that was Unit 1. If you didn't already do so, fill out the unit study guide in the Ultimate Review Packet to verify you practicing and understanding all these different concepts. Also, take a look at the next set of videos. They're gonna have practice questions where I'm giving you a multiple choice question, and then I go over the answers to those questions to verify you're getting it. Hey, as always, thank you so much for watching my videos. Please make sure to subscribe to my YouTube channel and let me know if you need anything else to help you learn and love economics. Thanks for watching. Until next time.